I really think a lot of the discussion we're having today is frankly a convenient distraction from the real issue. I mean, we can go down in the nits and gnats of all of these proposals and an argument about the progressivity and the regressivity of the Dayton proposals and of what we're doing overall in terms of our tax structure. Just can't avoid the fundamental question of, are we better off leaving $4.1 billion in the private sector for private sector activities, consumer spending, investment, job creation, all of those things, or are the public purposes that we would put that $4.1 billion to in state government a higher value and better on the net? And when you think about what we really need in terms of growth in this state and a stunted private sector with smaller job creation is just inevitably going to spiral down to lower revenues for the state. And so talking about progressivity and regressivity, I think, is a little bit of a foil. And I'll just give you a classic example. Think about the taxes that we've raised in this state recently. Statewide sales tax, regressive. Gas tax, regressive. Increased tab fees, regressive. A stadium sales tax, regressive. Cigarette tobacco impact fee, regressive. And so we've loaded up on the regressive taxes in all of our tax actions recently. And so now the solution is to balance that with a progressive tax increase. And if you look at the chart from Representative Lencheski, and I remember some of this from testimony 2 years ago, I think our state income tax is actually a fairly progressive income tax compared to other states. I'm remembering that maybe it was the 4th or 6th highest, most progressive. And so it's these other taxes that increase regressivity. So if Governor Dayton were really interested in reducing the regressivity of our tax code, he could do it far faster by cutting regressive taxes. And if we wanted a balanced approach, what about cutting regressive taxes to $1 billion? And what kind of an impact would that have on the overall regressivity of our tax system? But of course, we don't consider that, because the fundamental question is, do we need to spend this $4.1 billion through state government for public purposes, or would we be better off leaving it somewhere else? And so I just want to get away from the distraction of all the conversation we're having. Regressivity and progressivity is an important discussion, but relative to the governor's overall budget proposal, I think it's a bit of a sideshow. There are better ways to address the regressivity of our tax code than loading up on a highly progressive income tax increase. And I'd like to also address some of the comments about marginal tax rates and passive versus active income investment. And I got a call from a guy in my district from a plane yesterday, the day after reading Governor Dayton's proposal in the Wall Street Journal. And he's like, how am I, he's flying from one city to another. I won't say where or what he's doing, but he's down approaching some business people about expanding a business and where they might move it. And he said, so how am I supposed to, in light of this headline, keep Minnesota on the list of places that we might actually expand this business? And this is a guy who just sold a very promising new medical technology in the endoscopy field to a Japanese firm, because the investors, now that this business has gotten to some scale and actually will generate some income, don't want to afford the Minnesota taxation rates. And so, we can argue about all of these points, but the fundamentals are, when Minnesota advertises itself as a high tax state, a place that's going to be tough to do business in, we're going to face decisions like that every single day, the people who are out doing this on the ground. So I think and I agree with many of the comments that have been said here, we have to have a more fundamental discussion about what are these public purposes, and are they worth taking $4.1 billion in new taxes out of the private sector to continue funding them. So I just want to make sure we don't get distracted by the discussion we're having today. And let's remember that there's a real discussion that we need to have relative to taxation. And it isn't just about the particulars of the governor's budget proposal. Let's not be sidetracked by that.